on and so forth, to come back with the second submission. Now, what we're trying to do, as I mentioned before, is with the two finalists, we're trying to take all the input that we've had from both folks and have those comments to give to both developers to come up with proposals that they felt best adhere to those comments. So we realize that this takes a tremendous amount of time, and we do appreciate your time and effort in coming back with this proposal. And we'll start the same way we did on the very first proposal, introducing myself as George Perham. I'm chairman of the RDA in town here, and also chair of the selection committee.
Jamie Millward, chairman of the town architectural review board.
Mary Dean, economic development director.
Patrick Carlton, I'm with the Connecticut Metropolitan Council of Governments. We're the regional planning agency that includes the region that includes the township.
I'm just testing this out. I'm Susmita Toda, the town planner for Stratford. And if you're able to speak through that mic, just to check if things are working.
Is it working?
Yes.
Okay,
And
good.
then I would just like to mention,
Good.
which I did to Damien initially, Ryan Ehrenhaus, who is the historic district representative for the committee, has a new job, is not able to be here, but he's reviewed all of both of the proposals and provided his questions to the committee, which we are incorporating in our questions.
Great. Good morning. Firstly, and most importantly, our team is very honored and extremely humbled to be here with you today as a finalist for the former Center School RFP. Thank you for this chance, and we appreciate and respect this opportunity very much. We would also like to personally thank the selection committee again, the Economic Development Director, and the mayor, as well as the Stratford community. We fully recognize and value all of your tremendous efforts and considerations, your suggestions, and your thoughtfulness in the selection process and throughout this RFP process. We also recognize the importance of your role here today to establish, to determine, and to ultimately recommend the right development team who can design, develop, and execute the proper TOD vision for this community and complement Stratford's revitalization efforts. We feel confident we are the right team to execute this vision. Sutton Place is a well-designed, Class A, boutique and branded TOD apartment community with classic New England architecture, modern amenities, and a community place with a strong sense of purpose. Today, we hope for you to learn more about our Sutton Place development, more about our team, and more about our promise to create and execute the right TOD development and the right TOD strategy that Stratford, the community, and its residents can be very proud of. We have listened to you very carefully and to all of your suggestions, and as you will see, we have implemented many of your considerations into our revised plans here today. We have listened. We have spent a considerable amount of time and careful thought to further improve our project. Our hope is what we present today will meet and hopefully exceed your expectations. We also hope for you to learn more about how our project will help energize the local community and foster and engage local community interaction and neighborhood and community involvement. We also look forward to further discussions with you and the town to help further develop and energize our proposed neighborhood Sutton Park area. We have made a suggestion of a complementary concept similar to Rowayton's successful Shakespeare on the Sound, which has turned into community highlight, an anticipated event in Rowayton. We look forward to further concepting with you and maybe to create something, a similar type venue here, such as pop-up plays or the Shakespeare on Sutton Park, for all to enjoy. Sutton Park could be a cultural resource and an identity for the Stratford community and bring together community involvement, enjoyment, and learning. We also look forward to further discussions with the mayor and the economic development team to potentially rehab and create Sutton Place Community Arts Center adjacent to our proposed East Broadway access, and potentially renovating that old historic home to something special and lasting. Our team is very familiar with working with organizations such as SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Office, and we look forward to engaging their great knowledge and their recommendations, along with yours, to recreate a piece of Stratford's history and possibly make some special venue for local artists and community creatives to engage, interact, communicate, and express themselves. We look to continue to work with Stratford, the town hall, and the community to bring this vision to life. Just to reintroduce myself and our team, my name is Damian Kalinagi. I'm the proposed co-developer of Sutton Place. Alongside me today is my partner and good friend, Scott Zwilling of Spirit Investment Partners. Scott and I have the utmost privilege and the honor to have assembled what we consider to have an amazing development team for Sutton Place. Bindfield, Eckerson, Light Associates, Kalinagi, and Spirit. We are confident our team has the experience, the knowledge, the ability, and the financial capacity to execute this project. We're using our own equity to get this project off the ground and financed. We are committed to this project and to Stratford's community to get it done. We are long-term owners. We are not planning to sell this project when we're complete. We are looking to reach out in the process and engage the community and get community thought and community interaction in this process and work together to develop something special and sensitive to the community and to the neighborhood. I will now let Bindfield take you through our revised architectural designs and our project highlights. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Seelan Butler. I'm a principal of Bindfield Architecture. Bruce Bindfield, our president, is here also. So I'll keep this fairly brief. We've been through the concepts before, and then hopefully that'll give us more time for discussion. But just to remind us of where we were, this is the scheme that we showed you before. There are a few guiding principles to the design of the space, or design of the site. One is to create a development that sets a building in a park-like environment. That was part of your brief. The other was to reduce the scale along Sutton Avenue and create a residential scale and reinforce the residential nature of that street. And third was to create a plan that allows for a vibrant, highly amenitized residential community that as an office we have experience creating. So again, just quickly touch on what we had before. We had a drop-off in this area coming to an entrance for the main building. We had 4 homes facing Sutton Avenue, again to recreate the residential scale across the street. We had BOE parking, the majority of the parking underground, again part of your brief, and 160 units in a 4-story structure as the main building. And an amenitized site plan that Bruce Exton will go through. That was the previous scheme. If we can switch to the new one. So I think that the principles, the guiding principles I just described were aligned with what the town wanted. So the idea of what we wanted to create. But we did receive feedback, and there were 3 specific items in the feedback that guided this new design. One of them was to move the entrance away from Sutton Avenue and onto East Broadway. And I'll go through that in a second. The other was to flip the U-shaped building to take the massing, change the scales, change the massing location so the massing is now along this rear part of the site facing the 95 and not Sutton Avenue. And the third was to get 50 to 60 underground spaces for the BOE in the garage below. Those were the 3 major elements that we hit. We agreed with all of those, especially the idea of changing the massing around and creating an entrance of East Broadway, which we think improves the project. So what you see here is creating this entrance of East Broadway and potentially a nice drop-off with a terminating vista on this building that you'll see in another slide into the amenity space in this area. You drive in, if you were a resident, you would come down this driveway around the rear of the site, down a ramp into the garage, and all of this parking is below. If you're visiting the Board of Education, you could come up here to these spaces above and a few extra spaces here and access the building that way. There's a stairwell from the garage to get into the board, to get from those parking spaces in the garage to the Board of Education as well. And then with regards to the site, we've done this a few times. Our office has created these residential communities. Part of the success of these spaces, of these developments, is creating a sense of place, a place where residents feel like they're living in homes and not just a general apartment. We do that by aligning the apartments with amenitized spaces like this large courtyard, 30,000 square feet, working off of approximately 8,000 square foot interior amenity. This would potentially have a pool and a deck for residents to enjoy. We have these 3 townhouse-like structures facing Sutton Avenue, again, to reinforce the residential scale from across Sutton Ave. These are 2 stories. This is 4 stories. In these, you would have 2 multi-story dwelling units, garages on the ground floor that you access from these curb cuts, again, mimicking what's happening across the street. And then you have single-story units above these garages. So 4 units and 4 units and 6 spaces in each of these buildings. And you'll see how that looks in our preview that we've included in your package. And then with regards to residential, double-loaded corridors, we'll see how that works on the floors above, with these lower floors having access to the amenities here. And what was nice about your suggestion, really, about flipping the massing, was that only these 2 potentially gable-end structures at 60 foot wide and 4 stories high face on the Sutton Ave. This is about 80 foot. This is 80 foot plus another 100 feet. So the large mass of the building is well removed from Sutton Ave now. So we thought it was an excellent suggestion. And it also opened up the courtyard to the rear of these townhouses, so now you're creating even a stronger sense of community. But these guys can walk out their back door and enjoy this courtyard. So for all those reasons, we really appreciated the feedback and we thought it was positive for the project. We think the sense of entry could be something special. You'll see it from East Broadway. You're driving along, you see your proposed driveway, you'll see a terminating vista, you see a building at the end of it. So there's no questions on that. And there's a beautiful landscape plan, but Bruce will describe that. We can go to the next one. This is just a slide showing that plan that we just saw in context, right? So you see now how far this mass is away from that home. And this is going to be an important development for the town, so we'll take the time and effort and care to make sure that this approach is a special one, and one that everyone knows is there and sees. This is a massing plan, again, just describes what I went through before. You can see quite clearly that those scales match. And you see quite clearly that that mass is far removed from that. And then these are the only 4-story structures that are even close to that road. So this reinforces this idea. Sorry, let's go across here. This reinforces the idea of pushing the mass back, and what that does for the perception from Sutton Ave. If you're standing across the street from Sutton Ave and you're looking at what is essentially a scale of a house, this townhouse structure, these townhouse structures obscure the view to the mass of the building, so that you can only, if you're looking over this portion of the building, you maybe catch that ridge, but you catch nothing of this. And this, obviously you'll have vistas between the buildings, but for the majority of the development, you won't see that mass. Let's go there. Just the forensics and how we got to the 50 spaces here. We had a bit of overflow parking from the previous scheme. So this scheme shows 206, I think, and the other one showed 198. Again, was one of your ideas to take parking spaces and put them in the townhouses, which we did, which generated 18 spaces there. We put 10 spaces on grade for the BOE here. We had a unit count reduction of 2, which helped with the parking. And with all of those factors, we managed to create 50 dedicated spaces in the garage to the town and the Board of Education. And he has an access from that garage to the BOE. I think we can skip this one. That was previous and current. We've been through that. Just very quickly in here, this is a typical residential floor. I think our office has, we can safely say we have experience in delivering highly amenitized apartment units. One thing we take pride in is trying to research what residential units mean in a community and what residents are looking for now as this is an evolving concept of how you work from home and so on. But we are looking at creating a product that serves this evolving need and by extension serving the town of Stratford. This is the next floor, right? All right, so can we flip back to the first page? I just want to say quickly, we went through the architecture on the very first page showing the 3D image, the rendering. No, just the, yeah, that. Okay, so finally, as we discussed this before, but the architecture is envisioned as a distilled and abstracted New England vernacular. I won't say much more than that. I mean, we've been through the renderings before, but our office takes pride in that, and we're confident we can achieve an attractive building. So, that's all I have. Any questions?
First, you want to talk about the landscape and then we get to the question.
Good afternoon, or good morning, sorry. Bruce Eckerson, landscape architect, principal of Eckerson Design Associates. So we were tasked with the redevelopment, or the redesign, I should say, of the grounds around the new building and the new 3 structures along Sutton Avenue. So the overriding principle was to make this feel like it was a building within a natural landscape, a well-developed New England landscape. And so what we've done, what was one of the good things that came out of bringing the entry off of East Broadway here was it actually opened up some space for us for the public park on the north side of the property. So now we have the ability to do a playground that would be open to the community. It could also be activated for the events and things that Damien had referenced earlier. So there's plenty of room over there to kind of have the park, a nice place to go. We also still have fire lane access that we have maintained, between the building and the park. So that's intended to be all lawn and landscaped. Along Sutton Avenue, again, we pictured this as your New England kind of street. We'll have canopy level trees along Sutton Avenue with low stone walls along the sidewalk. The curb cuts have been limited to 4 that only access the 3 townhouse buildings that Seelan had referenced. So we're able to keep the parking and the vehicle activity off of Sutton Avenue, really just to deal with, really just to accommodate the residents there. And so we were able to take all the surface parking that was required for the BOE and the visitors and put it really on the south side of the building. So that's all screened and all hidden from Sutton Avenue. So we also we also adapted the amenity space in the middle with the pool, artificial turf areas for games, individual little terrace areas inside and also around the back, and the sides for the units that are on the ground floor, barbecue pods, things like that will reinforce the sense of community of the space. We also have a community garden which is along the western property line for all the residents as well. So the overriding principle was to make this a nice landscaped area around the buildings, keep the scale appropriate to Sutton Avenue, take the parking to the south side, so that is all that vehicle traffic is removed from Sutton Avenue, and the access underneath the garage to the garage is along the western side of the site.
The only thing else to add is, you know, the park on the left side plan is a public park that, you know, as we discussed last time, and what Amy had mentioned, is for the community, for, you know, people to travel. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. The only other thing to point out is that the park on the left side is a public park. That's not just for the residents of, you know, the building. You know, we you know, thought it would be a good opportunity, as Damien mentioned, to you know, have some community events in the park. You know, whether we do some sort of Shakespeare in the park or something like that. But we thought it was a great opportunity to activate that side and really, you know, provide something for the community, not just for the residents of the building.
And like I said, with the building actually shifting more to the north, you'd think there'd be less space over there, but with the underground access on the western side as opposed to the northern side where we had it before, that space actually opens up for a lot more use as a park, either for a playground or for community events. And with that, pass it to Scott.
Yep. Hi, just to reintroduce myself, I'm Scott Swilling. I'm one of the co-developers of the project. If you can go to the source and uses, Max. Keep going. Good. There you go, stop. Okay. So just to kind of talk about what's changed, in the new scheme, we've lost 2 units. So we're down to 160 units. And one other thing to point out that is not shown on the plans is in those townhouse units, we have a 1-bedroom unit that is above the garage. So it's essentially, it's all 2 stories. That could be made into a 3-bedroom unit, which is what we have here. We have the 3-bedroom units. It could be, you know, 6 2-bedroom units and, what is it, 3 or 4 1-bedroom units. Three.
Could be 6 3-bedrooms.
Yeah, that's right. So we thought it was a good opportunity to provide, you know, an extra bedroom, make them 3-bedroom units. There's not too many of them, and I think that ultimately they'd be very successful, you know, in terms of demand. So the total project costs about 40.338. That's been, you know, working closely with Steve Nazardo, our contractor. Costs have gone up about $500,000, and that's mostly due to the parking. You know, the parking plan originally, the garage was just under the surface, the footprint of the building. We've now expanded the footprint of the garage to, it's essentially under the space in between the townhomes and the actual building. So there's some additional costs there. The original plan was to finance it with 70% construction debt and 15% mezzanine debt, but the project can't support that extra debt, so we've lowered the mezzanine debt to about 9 or 10%, with the rest being equity. It's a larger equity investment for us, but we felt it was better suited for the project. So I think we went from $6 million in equity to $8 million in equity. Go to the next page, Max. We don't have to harp too much on this. You know, really the only things that changed financially would be the taxes, which I'll go over next. The market rent, nothing changed except now we have a 3-bedroom unit. I think we're pricing those at $3,750. We had 2-bedroom homes originally priced at, I think, $3,450 or $3,500. So for the extra bedroom, we have that priced at $3,750. Go to the next page. And then the parking income is substantially, well, it's lower because we lost 8 spaces in the garage that we were renting out to our residents. Go to the next page. So, and just to mention on the parking, you know, the plan to have the spaces for the Board of Ed, there's no intent of charging the Board of Ed or, you know, the community for those spaces. So that's just a loss to us. We plan on maintaining it. You know, and what we originally did, and just to reiterate, you know, the cost of the underground garage, you know, and the way we thought about it was to come up with a tax incentive plan that would essentially pay for the cost of the garage. So the original garage was about $500,000 less, and we came up with, I think it was like an 16-year tax abatement schedule that phased in, starting in year 3, pretty evenly, and got us on a present value basis, to be roughly the cost of the garage. Now that the cost of the garage is a little bit higher, and we've lost the 8 parking spaces, actually we lost more, we lost 42 spaces that we were planning on renting out to our residents for underground parking at $50 a space. So that's about $25,000 in lost revenue that now we're giving to the Board of Ed. So the kind of capitalized value, the value of that lost parking is worth roughly $500,000. So net, we came up with a tax incentive plan that's roughly almost equal to the cost of the garage plus the lost revenue. So the only difference here is this 2 extra years in tax incentives, and the phasing is, we played with the phasing a little bit to get down to a present value that was equal to, the lost revenue plus the cost of the garage. That's the only thing that has changed. The total cost of the project, I think now we're at $252,000 a unit on 160 units. Before we were at 248. So, an extra $4,000 per unit in total cost. But, the only thing, like I mentioned, the only thing that changed really is the parking. But, everything else remained the same. So our purchase price, what we were anticipating, our offer, nothing's changed there. So, in conclusion, we hope that, we really listened to what you guys had to say, and, we believe that we've addressed everything. I think the original ask was 60 spaces underground. We came up with 50 plus 10 just outside the garage. And just to explain that, there is a scenario where, here, just go to the parking plan next. Yeah. And ceiling, correct me if I'm wrong. But the reason we didn't do 60 underground was because we would have had to add another row of parking, which is very costly. So we thought that the right blend, without impacting the project further, would be to give you 50 plus 10 right outside the garage. But if you had said, listen, we absolutely want 60 underground, not 50, we could do it. It's just extra cost that we thought, if we get almost there, we thought that was a compromise. But again, that's something we absolutely could do. It's just an extra cost. But everything else, I think we've addressed. In terms of public parking, I think we've counted. Go back. Yeah, the revised. Yeah, so not included in our parking counts at all is, I think, 9 spaces that we've counted that could be striped along Sutton Avenue. That's not included in our plan. That's just, I know there's been a need for public parking. That could be. And then the other thought, and similar to a project that I've worked on in South Norwalk, is, if the Board of Ed needs their spaces for kind of the average workday, and most of the demand for traffic is going to come at night for restaurants, there is a scenario where, people can come and park after work hours, and you can get extra public parking there. But that's not factored into any of our numbers. Okay, so can we answer any questions? If there's architecture questions, I'll let you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So once again, thank you for your time. I think you did a great presentation. We appreciate it very much. My first question is that the town has basically allowed for a 10-year abatement, and you move that up to 18 years. So you're asking a lot of the town financially that is not written anywhere in our ordinances or any of our requirements. Can you explain why you went that far, and could you go back to a 10-year abatement if the town council and the town father, so to speak, had mandated that?
Yep, so, I mean, you know, the intent was to pay for the cost of the garage, the underground garage. So what we have not considered is any other financial incentives that the town may be able to provide to help close that gap. But, you know, I mean, it was completely arbitrary how we came up with 16 or 18 years. It was math, you know, to come up with, on a present value basis, that those savings that were equal to the cost of the garage. So if the town said, listen, you know, we're only providing 10, then we still have a gap between the cost of the garage and the present value of those savings, which, you know, we can look into other, programs. I don't know if there's any other, offerings the town could have, grants, whatnot, that could help close that gap. So that's something we can absolutely look into.
Okay. I think you mentioned the BOE, there would never be never be a charge for the BOE use of the parking on your property in perpetuity? And that would be something you want to write into the lease?
At our maintenance, correct.
Right. We understand the parking garage is a big demand, it's a large cost as well. On the other hand, we do believe that it really increases the value of the property and the project in totality. My question is that at the end of the day, if you needed to provide parking, there's a cost there, right? And that cost, so the parking for the residents only is a cost that would be something I would think less than the $7 million. So is there not a delta between that $7 million parking garage cost versus what it would cost if you were to do it above grade?
Right. I mean, I'd let Steve Nazzardo answer that question specifically, but, you know, to provide surface, I mean, if you gave this RFP out and said no mention of underground parking, I think we probably would have come up with a scheme that had a bunch of surface parking. So, you know, that's something the town wanted, that's something we addressed. So the cost of surface parking is probably de minimis compared to underground parking. You know, I'm sure there's a cost for laying the asphalt, and I don't know exactly what that is. Steve can.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into the underground parking, the extra concrete work, the extra steel work. Obviously, the elevator has an extra stop. You got the dry system for the sprinkler. So yes, there is a cost associated with putting asphalt, but it's a much lower cost than the parking garage.
But the parking underneath the building itself is basically an extension of the foundation walls, right? So the cost of the structure directly below the building is a heck of a lot cheaper, less expensive than the cost of the parking below the pool and the promenade and all that, right? So what I'm trying to get at is that there's, you know, the town is willing to share the cost because we're demanding the underground parking, right? And so we understand that. But there is a certain expense that comes from the developer anyway, regardless, for just the residents. So I'm trying to understand if you've taken that into account, that delta there.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't done that math specifically, but I think most of the costs that we've addressed are really for the underground parking garage. And I mean, we can take a closer look at it and tell you exactly, you know, but, you know, I don't think it's going to be substantially different, but we can take a closer look at it, sure.
Okay. And, you know, we understand as a committee and as a town that we put that strain on you. But that aside, if we basically took off the handcuffs, what would you do different with the project, if anything? I mean, are we missing something? Should we be doing something different that we haven't presented to you? Again, let's take the underground parking, because we all know that that's a strain. But other than that, is there anything else that you would change with the project if you came in here without any of our demands or questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Bruce, do you want to, just from a pure TOD or, you know?
Why don't you come to the microphone? I think it might be easier to hear. Thank you.
Bruce Beinfeld from Beinfeld Architecture. So we feel really good about this plan and the way it will add to the vitality of the downtown and do so in a way that doesn't impact, that we really tried to do it in such a way that it had no negative impact on the surrounding neighbors, and we really focused on it being a great place to live. As I mentioned at our initial interview, we've done a number of apartment building projects of this size, and by amenitizing them in such a way, they become really vital communities in and of themselves, and then all of the people that live here will be going out to dine and shop in the downtown area. So we see it as a great project for downtown Stratford.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question specifically, what we do differently, I mean, I really think the parking is the biggest thing. I don't think we would have, I mean, if this was a site in downtown Stamford, we were going to build a high-rise, no question, we would build an underground parking garage. But for a 3-story stick, 3 to 4-story stick construction, we would absolutely look at building, a surface parking. It's probably very similar. Damien's project, also in Stratford, called The Village, is probably exactly what we would build.
I realize there's a balancing act here, right? So you need so many units in order to have this thing make sense for you financially. Right. So, our approach has always been that the more surface parking, then potentially the less units, the more pavement, the more that's sort of against the direction that we've gotten from the rest of the townspeople, if you will. So that's where we're driving this from. We're not driving it that, we just don't want parking. It's coming from a lot of different.
And I get it. From a community perspective, to have the green space, if I was the town, I can't say I understand. But there's, as you know, there's a substantial cost to doing that. So, that's what we've tried to address. I think, if you said, okay, forget the underground parking garage, we'd probably go back to looking at, a plan similar to what Damien's done at the Village. But, I think what we've done is great, and I think, if we can figure out how to bridge that gap, then I think at the end of the day, the town gets what they want, and we have a project that can be viable.
I mean, there's no doubt you've done a lot of research in how you come up with your solution. Another question that I have is the potential concern about the homes on Sutton. It's a pretty big number. I think it's $3,750, if I recall.
I'm sorry?
I think the rental was $3,750 a month, if I recall.
Just for the 3-bedroom units. But,
right.
But again, if we broke this into a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom, it's less.
Right. So you feel pretty confident in your marketing analysis that you'd be able to, the last thing we want to have is beautiful townhouses that will be empty on Sutton.
No, I think there's substantial demand, or there's demand for townhomes. I've, between Damien's firm, my firm, and Vinefield, I mean, we've built billions of dollars in multifamily projects throughout Fairfield County. So I think we have a good understanding of what, the demand is. And I feel pretty good about having a small amount of, larger townhome units on Sutton Avenue. I think there's, those will always be in demand. I'm not sure I want 100 of them, but, to have 6, 3-bedroom units that are a little bit larger, I feel pretty good about that.
So I feel the mix is good?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Back to your abatement. And we mentioned this earlier, is we all understand that prices, especially nowadays, are on a roller coaster ride, right? Prices have gone through the roof. Now they're starting to come back down a little bit. Who knows what the pandemic is going to bring us, and it's going to go up or down. When it comes to the abatement, should we be because at the end of the day, we need to equate your proposal with the other proposal. We need to make a recommendation to town council. So what we're trying to understand, is it the number in the abatement, or is it the percentage of the number? And is the mill rate static, or did you figure a fluctuating mill rate? How'd you come up with that analysis in regard?
Right.
What
so remind me, Max, I think we assumed an inflation in the mill rate.
You did.
And you know, it was math in terms of, you know, years, the phase-in schedule, so we played with it to get to that present value. You know, obviously, if it was, you know, 4 or 5 years of zero, right, as opposed to, you know, 2 or 3, that would change the need to go out longer, right? So in terms of the taxes, remind me, Max, how, what the tax analysis?
Stratford property taxes, you work this assessment over years. We assumed a 3% inflation of the mill rate from net present day mill rates through the entire whole analysis. And so we've, using that analysis, took a projected full value taxes and then played with the percentage of taxes phased in. So there's a full tax bill and then that got us to our full tax bill projected, and then took a percentage of that to give our tax savings, and then, you know, value that as a present value to get to that 7.403.
So our full taxes, I mean, after the abatement wears off, is about $1.7 million, growing, right? So
With the projection of inflation.
with the projection of inflation, correct? Yeah, and we'd be happy to open up our books and show you that tax calculation, because I think, you know, there may be more abilities on the town's part to, you know, to figure out a solution than what we've just assumed, rather than just some schedule with a phase-in in a number of years. So we'd be happy to share that.
I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, George. Yeah.
Okay, thanks you guys for all the hard work. I know what goes into putting a project like this together. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback on a little of what George said, because it's one of the things that have been running through my mind. You know, and that's the cost of the underground parking as it relates to, you know, what you're going to try and receive in tax abatements. And, you know, I know you said, oh, if you took the project without any restrictions like putting underground parking, you might do something like was done by Damien, you know, further south on Main Street. You know, but you also, earlier on in the kind of design discussion, talked about how kind of amenitizing the project with things like pools and patios and barbecues and everything it's seemingly like that was a big part of the design criteria, you know, and so I just wonder, you're not, if you were doing a project, you needed to get to a certain number of units, and you had surface parking, I mean, I think that, I'm imagining that a lot of those amenities would probably have to go away.
Not necessarily. So the site.
Okay.
Well, yeah, no, and fair point. The site is how large? I can't remember off the top of my head. How many acres? 3 point, okay.
Yep.
I mean, let me answer that.
Sure.
Because we got a full amenity package. 5 acres, 1.2.
Well, I'll try to answer from architectural point of view as opposed to
Yep.
to Scott.
Fair. Yep.
If the one thing that would change, chance that could change, we have to study it closely, is that this is a 30,000 square foot courtyard. On average, for large projects we've done in New Haven, we have 2 large projects in New Haven with massive courtyards. On average, they put 15 to 18,000 square feet. So this is bigger than we normally do. And as George, as you know, we're putting this over a parking deck and putting a pool over a parking deck. That all gets expensive. So we would ordinarily stay away from trying to create such a large courtyard over a parking deck like we did on Damien's project. So in effect, this would squeeze like that. You'd lose units potentially in this central area, but this would compact.
But I mean, to give you an idea,
So you can get a double drive aisle. The way we would do it, just starting off, if we were doing like Damien's, and you get a double loaded drive aisle around the perimeter of this, and squeeze the building slightly to do that.
yeah, and I mean, just in very simple terms, Damien, your site's an acre, 1 point.
I think it's like under 2. It's like 1.6.
1.6, and he has 100 units fully amenitized, right? This is 3, we have 160. So, you know, I still think, you know, I don't think we would lose amenities. I mean, the courtyard we get smaller, but again, like, you know, we don't necessarily, that doesn't add to the rent. We're not losing any of the services we intend to provide. Just more grass space. I mean, you know, there's bocce court, but
Obviously, the open space, the park you're able to create, more community involvement and allowing the distances. So that you're not going to be able to see the mass in the same way. So, that it creates a huge benefit for the community to be able to do this. But obviously, there's cost involved.
Yeah. I mean, it's different. I'm familiar with that project as well. I mean, it's different in that you have along Sutton Place in this particular project, have the lower scale kind of residential sized townhouses, which is, I don't know how much of the net area of the lot that is, but it's, a quarter at least, maybe a quarter of the property is taken up by those. So I don't know. I guess I'm still like George trying to understand. Sure. The amount of the, at the end of the day, that's, for the people who sit up here on the council, that's going to be a big part of, understanding the value that of what you're proposing. It's great for your project, and yes, the underground parking under the building is not as expensive as the underground parking under the, under the courtyard. I totally understand that, and so that very expensive and long abatement, I think is.
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to be a tough sell. I think it's going to be certainly one of the things that's going to be difficult to make your project saleable is that part of it. So,
yeah, I mean, and again, I'm open to exploring ideas of how to bridge that gap. It doesn't have to be all in a pilot or an abatement. But I mean, there's, I think the best way to do this, I can gladly open up our books and talk through numbers, what's behind these numbers directly, so you can kind of see everything. We're happy to go open book.
Okay.
Because I think that'll help show. But I mean, it is, it is expensive. There's a reason why, most 3- and 4-story garden apartments do have surface parking. I mean, unless the rents are substantially higher, and then the rents can offset the cost of a below-ground garage. Mm-hmm. The rents here are good, but it's not, if this was in a tighter site, if it was in Fairfield, if it was in Westport, Stanford, Granite, then we would look at, I think we would probably look at an underground garage because the rents can support it.
Mm-hmm. Understood. So, and then the one thing I just wanted to make, I'm pretty positive we discussed it last time. I just want to make sure I'm clear again about it. The purchase price of the $750, the cost of creating that park isn't coming out of the cost of the project. The $750 is paying for. Yeah. So
we've said the purchase price is $750. We're allocating $500 towards the park, and $250 for the net purchase price of the land. So, that's.
Okay, just wanted to be clear. Okay, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Hi. I really like the design of the project, and it looks very aesthetically pleasing. I have no major questions. I asked the same question to the other team too regarding traffic impacts, and if you had done any analysis on how much of a traffic impact this would be on Main Street and nearby.
We haven't done a traffic study at this stage in the process. That would be something that we would do in our due diligence. We've kept almost all the traffic off of Sutton. Really, at the end of the day, all we have is 6 units, which arguably is less than the number of units we have across the street. So we're not even doubling the traffic along Sutton Avenue, and it's all kept to Broadway. So if that's something, if that was required, we can do a traffic study. But that's not, we haven't done any testing or traffic studies or anything like that at this point. I'm sorry? 12 units. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Just 2 points of clarification. Can you give us the total amount of underground parking spaces and also surface spaces?
Yeah. So I believe we have, I don't know if you have those numbers handy. It's 198 below grade, 50 of which are for the Board of Ed. Above grade, we have another 10 for Board of Ed, so a total of 60, plus the 20 visitor Board of Ed, so that's 30, plus another 4 for visitor spaces, so that's 34 above. So what is that, 198 and 34? Is that?
34 above.
Yep.
There's 198 in the garage. And then
Is it 206 or 198? I'm blanking. It's 206 below grade, sorry. 198 was the original plan. Right.
Okay.
Right. So 206 less 50
Yep.
is what's allocated to the residents.
Gotcha, thank you.
and then 18 spaces in the town.
The town.
Right.
Garages.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
And then an additional 9, which are not in our parking counts
On the street.
on the street.
Okay. And just to, also one point of clarification, so the original proposal was to have all subsurface parking below the building footprint, and now that's extending out to be below the amenities as well? Or no? Is it
So-
still all under the?
Now, directly the answer is no. Extended beyond the perimeter of the wings of the building
Yep.
and below the courtyard in both zones.
Okay, great.
But what Scott was mentioning is that if we want to take those 10 and put them somewhere, now we're going outside the footprint entirely, and then you need to drive out to service those, and that gets inefficient.
Thank you.
My recollection, though, you always had parking under the plaza.
Yeah, I said that, yeah. So, yes, both schemes have.
That's what I thought.
I'm good. You guys have handed, so I'm fine.
I think, oh, I do have one more thing.
Sure.
I guess I have 2 questions. So the first, just to reiterate your long-term commitment here, you're still in this for the long haul?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So there's no-
Our intent is not to merchant build this or sell it. We intend to hold this long term.
Okay, good.
Like my kids will think.
Okay, and actually, I think that was, there was something else on my mind, but it's slipping my mind. I'll come back.
Any other questions? So again, go ahead. Yeah, feel free. Yeah.
So how did you come up with the value of the land? In other words, the $750,000. How did you come up with that number?
That was, strictly a matter of economics, given the cost of the project, the rents that we're getting, what we can afford to pay for the land. That was.
Okay, so there was no sort of appraisals or comparative analysis or anything you did?
I mean, we did, the problem with a lot of, looking at comparative land is that a lot of land's not sold as of right. It's sold, with some sort of rezoning, so the purchase price is, someone might have bought an office park or a parking lot that was purposed as an office building or parking lot and got it rezoned. So it's not, a directly comparative analysis. At the end of the day, what developers can afford to pay for land is a matter of the economics of the project.
Well, just in closing, again, I want to thank you. I think you guys did a great job, and we truly appreciate all the effort, because I know, as an architect myself, I know what goes into this, so thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, and thank you for all your input. We greatly appreciate it.